We're back live with you tonight on In Focus. ANC, DA and IFP all managed to retain seats in the by-elections in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga this week. The DA celebrated an increase in support despite not being able to unseat at the ANC elections. Analyst Wayne Sussman joins us now for more on that conversation. Wayne, good to have you once again. Thank you very much for your time. So give us the setting, firstly, of what was happening in KwaZulu-Natal and what was up for grabs, especially in some of those much contested areas where the IFP is seeking to retain its power in considering, of course, that there's that NFP, ANC and EFF collaboration.
Thank you and good evening. So the by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal were centered around the northern KwaZulu-Natal area, and this is an area where we know the IFP has been making deep inroads into ANC support, where there have been wild swings from the ANC to the IFP, and there have been some shocking upsets. In this round of by-elections, no wards changed hands, but you saw the IFP continue to do well in northern KwaZulu-Natal. So in Nongoma, which is a hotly contested municipality right now, where I expect the IFP to lose power because the ANC are working with the EFF and the National Freedom Party, the NFP there. But the IFP held the ward, and they held it quite convincingly. They beat the ANC by a wider margin than they beat them in 2021. What was very interesting about Nongoma is that this was the place where Action SA made their by-election debut in KwaZulu-Natal. Normally when one thinks of Action SA, we think of more urban areas, and here they were in a deeply rural part of Nongoma, and they came third with 10%, which was quite interesting. And then Mvoti, which is near the Greytown area, this was another rural ward where the IFP increased their majority there. They had a good hold there. And what's interesting about Mvoti is that this is the hometown of the former Jacob Zuma backer and the former eThekwini Deputy Mayor PG Mavundla. He hails from Greytown, he hails from Mvoti. And he has recently, after turning his back on the ANC, he turned his back recently on the IFP and went back to working with the ANC. So this is another hotly contested area where he'd like to become the mayor, and the IFP held this ward as well. And then just very briefly, in the Abakulusi area in Vryheid in northern KwaZulu-Natal, the ANC were able to hold on to the ward despite a strong challenge from the IFP. So no seats changed hands. The ANC will be satisfied that their losses weren't as great as in previous weeks and months, and the IFP will still be satisfied that they are on this growth trajectory.
So, by and large, IFP is still on its trajectory as opposed to regain parts of KwaZulu-Natal in a strong way.
Correct. So what we're seeing is that without a shadow of a doubt, in the year of 2023, there's a consistent theme of the IFP performing exceptionally well. And yes, they would have liked to have won the seat in Abakulusi and had a clean sweep of all these northern KZN wards yesterday evening. They came close in Abakulusi, but they are still on an upward trajectory, and a party who I think are going to do well in the 2024 elections and certainly make KwaZulu-Natal very, very interesting.
Let's come back a little bit closer, Mirafong. The setting there in Carltonville, it's one that has been rather closely contested, and by the looks of it, this time around, the DA certainly doing much better.
Correct. So this was in the heart of Carltonville, gold mining country. The town's fortunes and despair is linked to the gold mining industry. Here, the DA increased the majority, but we need to just be very transparent here, is that the Freedom Front didn't stand in the by-election. And when you take what the DA and the Freedom Front got in the previous election, the DA actually made a slight improvement on that. This means that there was a large section of Freedom Front voters who came out in Carltonville to vote for the DA. The ANC also made some slight improvements in this area, but the DA held there, and it was an important win for them, because we know that Gauteng, just like KwaZulu-Natal, which we've been speaking about a few minutes ago, is going to be a battleground province in 2024.
So, Gauteng, I see the ANC in Tshwane. They're celebrating the fact that Tshwane Ward 105, that's the Bronkhorstspruit, the Tobeni area, the ANC moved up from 42% to 55%. Firstly, let's talk about the turnout.
Correct. So this is Bronkhorstspruit, Zitobeni. It's in the eastern part of Tshwane, where the famous Nanhua Buddhist temple is, close to the Mpumalanga border. This is the ward of the most voting districts in Gauteng. It's got 21 voting districts. So this is a very large area. It was a competitive race in 2021. And what was interesting here is that parties like Action SA, parties like the Freedom Front, parties like the African Christian Democratic Party didn't contest the election, and in a way, in essence, endorsed the Democratic Alliance. So the key thing going to this election is, were those voters of those parties going to come out and vote for the Democratic Alliance? This is a fascinating result. This is a great result for the ANC. Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier, was cock-a-hoop this morning, and his mood will be very, very good. How did the ANC increase their majority here, when, in a way, the odds were stacked against them, that all these parties who work with the DA stood aside for the DA? Fascinating. We go to places like Zitobeni, the large township next to Bronkhorstspruit. We go to the village of Sokolumi, which is a more rural village. These are the ANC strongholds. We see support up in those areas. And we contrast this with Bronkhorstspruit and the suburbs around it, like Bester Park, the traditional DA strongholds. What's happening there? The turnout is down. So it's not that the ANC were making inroads in DA areas. What was key in this victory for the ANC is that they got their voters out to vote. Their voters are energized. And in this particular by-election, the Democratic Alliance voters were not that energized, and the ANC almost beats the Democratic Alliance in a competitive seat by 2-1. Politics is about momentum. Politics is about narrative. There is a lot of good coming for the ANC tonight out of their win in Tshwane yesterday.
Narrowing the gap between it and the multi-party coalition, because as you put it, the Freedom Front plus ACDP, COPE, IFP and Action SA all set this one out, of course, then consolidating those members towards Democratic Alliance. So essentially the ANC here was going up against, maybe shall we say, the multi-party coalition, and it managed to narrow that particular gap. Would you say it has something to do with all the drama that we have been seeing around Randall Williams, around the expelled members of Action SA and so on and so forth?
Yeah, look, the DA also had their federal Congress last weekend, so maybe some of their members were more focused on that. We know that just before the ANC's national conference, the party faced some banana peels because members are more focused on the national conferences. But that can only be an excuse for so much. The ANC ran a perfect campaign here, got their supporters out, and they now have a story to tell that, look, our voters, our supporters, our base are energized. They voted for us in Bronkhorstspruit and Zitobeni yesterday, and they're going to vote for us in 2024. And those who say that Gauteng will be lost to the ANC need to look at Ward 105. And we contrast that to the Democratic Alliance, who couldn't get voters from the multi-party coalition energized yesterday. Sileas Brink, the new mayor of Tshwane, was on the ground early yesterday morning, campaigning in Bronkhorstspruit. He'll have to look at these results very, very hard. The one caveat I want to say is that Bronkhorstspruit and Zitobeni and the farming areas around it are not your average ward in Tshwane. So it's not like Soshanguve or Mamelodi for the ANC, and it's not like, let's say, parts of Centurion and Waterkloof for the DA. It's a more of a rural area, so that is something the DA might be hopeful with. At the end of the day, this is a very, very good result for the ANC.
Mpumalanga, Gertseband, Mkhondo, Grootvlei, and as well as the Nkangala district. ANC showing some degree of majority in the Mpumalanga province.
Correct. So just, it was, I think, towards the end of last year, the ANC lost a seat in Nkomazi, deep rural seat, one of the safest ANC areas, not just in Mpumalanga, but in the whole of the Republic of South Africa. So the opposition was seeing a weakened, beleaguered ANC there. This round of by-elections and in previous rounds of by-elections, you've seen the ANC surging in Mpumalanga. If you remember the early elections in South Africa, there used to be this competition between Mpumalanga and Limpopo as to what was the safest ANC area in the country. I remember one election was actually in Mpumalanga. In recent years, you've seen Limpopo and the Eastern Cape being the flag bearers for the ANC. But in the last night gave indication that the ANC could be on a serious rebound in Mpumalanga. They won all 3 seats in Mkhondo, which is the Mkhondo, which is the formerly Piet Retief, the hometown of famous opera singer Pretty Yende. We've had 9 by-elections in Mkhondo since the 2021 local government elections, including the 3 I'm referring to last night. The ANC has gone 9 for 9. They've won every single one. Then we go to Balfour, to Dipalaseng municipality. And here you see the ANC in the Grootvlei, where the Grootvlei power station is, increased their majority in that particular by-election. These are all great results for the ANC. And we move across to Victor Kanye. I thought that this could be a very close by-election. Again here, the ANC, even though they dropped some support, did very, very well, and the big losers were a local party who's performed quite well there in the 2021 local government elections. So we had 5 by-elections in Mpumalanga, in 3 different municipalities, in 2 different districts, and the ANC in 4 out of those 5 having very strong holds, and they would be confident that they're on the road to success for the Mpumalanga province in 2024. And I just want to take a quick step back. We know that the ANC's got challenges in the Western Cape. We know that the ANC's got challenges in KwaZulu-Natal. But it presented last night that in provinces like Gauteng, that in provinces like Mpumalanga, these by-election results suggest that the party is in fact on track for 2024, not off track.
Wayne Sussman, as always, much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on. Election analyst there, Wayne Sussman, helping us make sense of those numbers and the outcomes of the by-elections.